Hi, good morning. This is Michelle Hocko with Remax Real Estate Center. Thank you for joining me on this live broadcast today. We're going to be discussing how to ease stress while moving. So obviously, the promise of all realtors is we're going to make this process, quick and easy and as fun as possible. And I think for the most part, most of us try to do that. But moving just by nature is a bit of a stressful process for people. If you've been through it before, then you'll understand exactly what we're talking about. There are definitely ways to make the process less stressful, and these are some of the things we're going to discuss today. I'm very fortunate that I'm going to have a guest on the show, naturopathic doctor Amy Dobbie from Milton. So she's going to be on the show talking about it from a proactive health perspective and what to do sort of if you have pushed your body a little further than you should have. So I'm really looking forward to inviting Amy on the show. So thank you. We are starting to get a couple of viewers, which is exciting. Thank you very much for joining us. So a couple of the things that I usually talk to my clients about when they're getting ready for a move is the fact that the more organized you can be in advance, the better. So if you are wanting to move, I know sometimes it happens spontaneously because you just happen to be on MLS, which I understand is just a hobby of most people. I can never understand that, but I have so many friends who spend time on MLS just purely as hobby, and then they might see a wonderful thing come up that sort of ticks all the boxes of all the things they've ever wanted, and then they will move forward on that, and it happens quite spontaneously. But for the majority of moves, you will have some lead time, so you know it's coming up. Or you'll say, we want to plan to move next year, for example. So that is, in my opinion, the best time to actually communicate with a realtor. I have clients, who I've been working with for some time, well in advance of when they fully intend to move, to start getting organized. We bring in staging to basically come through and say, let's take care of these things before you put the house up on the market. And if you have a good few months in advance to work on them, you're not feeling this high pressure stress feeling, 20 days before you have to put the house on the market. So my top tip is to plan ahead and then work with a professional to establish what sorts of things you should be getting organized in your home so that you can work at that project gradually and get things going. So another top tip that I have for people is to hire help. So if you have a very busy life and you need to get painting done in your house and you do have the funds to do it, especially if you are on a tighter timeline, it really makes sense to hire a painter. Save yourself the stress. There are expenses involved with moving, and that's okay. So just sort of build it into your plan that you will spend a certain amount of money to have a handyman come in to help do some of the smaller repairs, even ones maybe that you're capable of doing yourself, just to sort of ease that load a little bit, because I think that a lot of us are sort of maxed out with our lives, and then when you add an extra task like getting ready for moves, sometimes it's too much. If you're able to take holiday or something to work on some extra tasks, that's good too, but I'm sure you would probably think that having holidays would be a good time to relax and rejuvenate. So anyway, I'm going to invite Amy onto the show now. So Amy is a naturopathic doctor at the Womb Milton. If you haven't been there, it is an absolutely wonderful wellness center that we have in Milton. They have a ton of resources there, everything you could imagine. I would strongly suggest that you visit their website. I've been there for massages, for naturopathic doctor. I've gone there for yoga, baby wearing instruction. They have breastfeeding consultants. They have midwives that work out of that location. There are a lot of chiropractor, everything you can think of is at the Womb. So do have a look at their website. But Amy specializes in fertility, prenatal, and pediatric medicine. And she is a wonderful doctor. We see her personally. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome Amy onto the show. Thank you for joining us, Amy.
Hello. Am I there?
You're there. I think you're on, yeah.
Great. Hello.
Excellent. How are you doing this morning?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. It's nice to see the sun shining. Oh, no, now it's going into clouds, but
I've got half and half here.
You got half and half?
Yeah. Thanks
Well,
for having
thank you. No worries. So I really appreciate the fact that you were willing to come on the show and talk about easing stress during a move. This is a very interesting topic. There is a lot, obviously, that people can do to sort of create the best conditions to keep their body healthy. I really believe in sort of more proactive medicine instead of going to the doctor once you're sick, right?
I agree, yes.
Yeah, so I'd love to really hear your thoughts on this. So if you are getting ready for something like a move, or if you are going through something like a divorce, or there's been a death in your family, or a major life change or shift, change, what sorts of things should we be watching out for?
So should we be watching out
for your health?
Yeah, so I was thinking of you yesterday, actually, because I drew the same little stress diagram, I think 5 times yesterday for different patients. And I thought, oh, this is exactly what Michelle and I are going to talk about tomorrow.
Perfect.
Really, for me, it's a lot of it is the same things that you were mentioning earlier, but I think they apply to so many parts of our lives. So I have the same conversation with someone who is a postpartum mom, someone who's struggling with fertility, someone who is trying to get back to work after having a baby, or like you're saying, a move. It's kind of all the same thing. It's really putting in kind of those little safeguards to make sure that we are being proactive and protecting our health rather than just kind of blindly moving ahead at the speed of light to get things done, to get packed, to get back to work, whatever it is. Because that's when I see, you can only do that for so long. And depends where you are in your life, right? If it's, if you tend to be already under a lot of stress, a lot of pressure, a lot of responsibility, that you can only do for a couple of days, maybe. If you're someone who has great stress resiliency, you might be like, oh yeah, no problem. I've got this. I can rush through this move and I can stay at work and I can do all the DIY projects on my own. But maybe a month or two in, you start to get symptoms and reactions too. So I agree with you that kind of putting in those like safeguards helps us to not get burnout or that adrenal fatigue that we talked about.
So I just heard you say some people who have great stress resiliency. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean? Because it's funny you say that, because I know I have 3 children. I've had 0 maternity leave. So I'm of that mindset of just getting things done, right? I feel like I'm comfortable with quite a lot of chaos, which sounds kind of crazy and maybe not actually true at all. But do we necessarily know when we're putting our bodies through stress? Like if we're these kind of stress resilient mindsets, is our body protected by that if we're not actually thinking we're feeling stressed?
Your body will find ways to tell you. So, and you could ignore them for a little while, but it will keep finding more and more ways to show you. So signs that you maybe don't have great stress resiliency would be if you tend to be someone who's really just dragging through the day. So, you're getting stuff done, but you are just exhausted by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. To me, that's a big sign. Maybe you're sleeping, but you're not getting into deep, restful sleep. Maybe you're waking up at 2 in the morning, writing out that list in your head of, oh, I have to make sure to pack this, and I have to drop that stuff off at Goodwill by tomorrow, and I have to make sure to call the movers and things like that. Okay. That shouldn't be happening. You should be able to do that during your day and get down into good sleep at night.
Okay.
Food cravings, so like wanting sugar and carbs and that 3rd or 2nd or 4th coffee, depending who you are. But you're starting to kind of use techniques to cope with stress, but you're not using your own internal strengths to cope with stress. The biggest one that I see that is sort of an early warning would be like irritability, or people come in and say like, I don't have any patience anymore. I have 3 kids and I'm working and I have no patience for them. And usually to me, that's a sign that they've literally just been on this little roller coaster of, I have to get the kids up, get their, lunches packed, get them out the door, get to work, call the movers at lunch, and get home and pack. If you're planning to move, I have to go through this box in the basement, and then I have to get dinner on the table, and then my husband comes home and I want to spend time with him, and you kind of are on this like constant treadmill. It makes sense that you would be very irritable because all you're doing is stressing all day long. So I always use the example of like stubbing your toe. If you're out with your girlfriends and you're dancing and you're having fun and you stub your toe, you're going to go, oh, that hurt. And you'll keep dancing and you're having fun because you're not in that like cycle of stress. Okay. If you're at the end of that long day, if it's 5 o'clock and you've spent your whole day just on the go stressed and you bang your toe, there might be a few words that we can't say on, Facebook Live that we would because your resiliency is not there. It's any little tiny thing is going to throw you over the edge. And so we perceive that as irritable or anxious, but really it's that we just can't take on that one extra little thing. And it can be really tiny. It doesn't have to be like a death in the family or like a huge stressor. It can literally be a toddler will not put their shoes on.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
I've been to that stress show. Yeah, you're like, this does seem like an overreaction to what's happening.
Yeah. If we step back, we think in the grand scheme of life, that's not a big deal. But in the moment, it feels like it's the end of the world. And that to me is stress resilience.
It's just the straw. Finally, or the mom's back, or the dad's back. Yeah, I feel like sometimes the moms do sort of internalize more of this stuff and, stress about it a little bit more. So what, you mentioned the term adrenal fatigue. So what does that mean?
Adrenal fatigue is basically when your body can't keep up with it anymore. So you have been going into what's called fight or flight. So that in caveman days was when a bear was going to come and attack me and eat me. I would go into fight or flight so I could run away from, or probably not, but I could fight off the bear. And we can only do that occasionally. We can't do that 30 times a day, like I'm saying. So our body, like I said, can kind of keep up, but eventually it just crashes and burns and says, I can't keep going at that rate anymore or that level anymore. And that's when the symptoms go from just, bothersome, irritability, patience to really hard. Like you're dragging through the day, you need a nap. Maybe that irritability is turning into panic attacks. Like we're starting to see much more significant symptoms.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So if we find ourselves feeling this way, what are the best steps to take? So I guess first maybe we should talk about maybe you're at burnout, because this is probably the reality for a lot of women maybe tuning into this or men tuning into this. I guess that's a question too. Do you see this adrenal fatigue more in women or do you see it more in men? Or both?
I see it more in women. That might be because I work at a clinic called The Womb, so it's mostly coming through my door. But I think that women have this unique characteristic in that we try and do everything, right? We're trying to run careers, we're trying to be a mom, we're holding ourselves to a high standard, and we're trying to keep our identity there. And I think we've really lost that, and this applies to where you're moving to, we lost this community a little bit, I think. And we're not quite as easy to ask for help. And I mean, it might not be a gender thing, it might be individual to the person, but I know for me that my husband, if he's tired, he'll have a relaxing night and he'll watch TV. If I'm tired, I go through the cycle of to-dos in my head. And I don't know if that's because he's a man or because I'm a woman, I don't know, but I do see it more in women for sure.
Okay. So you find yourself with exhibiting some of these symptoms of maybe burnout or adrenal fatigue, or I guess maybe start with, you find the early warning signs. You're like, wow, I'm like super crunchy about everything, right? What am I doing? What should I do next? How do I deal with this before it becomes a bigger problem?
The very best thing to do is self-care, which I hate using the word self-care, but
so like self-care.
Yeah. Because when we hear self-care, we think, oh, bubble baths and manicures. And if you tell someone who's already stretched thin, like, do self-care, they're going to go, I don't have time to do
They're like, when?
Yeah, this is the argument that my patients have back to me every day. And to me, self-care, yes, is great if you can do an hour-long yoga class. It's great if you can meditate. If you're someone who's irritable and wound up, good luck trying to meditate right from the very get-go, right? It's hard to shut off your mind. But self-care can also be things like putting in boundaries. So usually people who suffer from this are pleasers, or people who say yes to everything, and they don't maybe step back and say, I'll get back to you tomorrow and I'll see if I have kind of the bandwidth to do that. So saying no, or saying no to things that you don't have the energy to do, or saying not now to them, or like you said, prioritizing and giving away some tasks that you can't do yourself, or maybe you can do, but you don't have the desire or time or energy to do them. That's self-care right in and of itself, is kind of protecting yourself there. So saying no, setting those boundaries and asking for help, which I realize is a very, very hard thing for a lot of people to do. for, like you said, with moving at the beginning, it's sort of like planning and getting organized, doing meal prep before you move, making sure you have a couple, freezer meals ready to go to take with you once you've packed up your whole kitchen before you have it totally unpacked. That's self-care right there, making sure that you're you're eating healthy foods and things like that. To me, it's also like prioritizing it, right? People say I don't have time, but we have time to use the bathroom. We have time to wash our hair. We have time to wash our hair. We have time to brush our teeth at night. We make time for things that are critical to our lives, and arguably self-care is much more important than how clean your hair is, right? So we have to kind of take it as something that is super critical, just as critical to our health as brushing our teeth.
That's awesome. I think I've kind of learned over time, and I think as we've added another child to our family even, it's what you're saying about saying no sometimes. And it doesn't even have to seem like this negative saying no thing. Sometimes it's about, if I'm going to pick up this ball, I better put down another ball because I'm getting a lot more realistic in my older age about how many things I can actually accomplish in a day. Like I used to be guilty before of, oh, I can do whatever, right? Like you'll just fit it in. But that's actually impossible. So I think sometimes like just assessing even our family schedules when we're deciding to do something like make a move, you're going to be adding chaos. You're going to be adding random showings into your evenings that you didn't have planned maybe to see houses. That's going to be disruptive to your routines, right? Like, so if we have time in advance, do we say, you know what, we're going to take this fall and we're not going to put ourselves in different activities? Do you know what I mean? Like, I hate to say, oh, take away some of the children's activities, but if you're still going to eat healthy meals and you're still going to have time to do all of the things that you want to do, you're going to have to really put one of your down, in my opinion.
Yeah. So, and I think it's a good point that it's not a negative or a permanent thing.
Oh,
right?
And I didn't mean for it to sound that way. And I know
no, I think you said it's not meant to be a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. And I think that it's better to show up and to really enjoy 2 or 3 things that you have the energy for and you can actually enjoy while you're there, rather than doing 12 things just because you have the small amount of time, or just because someone asked you, or just because you can. I'm sure your kids would rather you take them to 1, activity a week instead of 5 if you are, stressed out and yelling at them in the car and stuff like that. I'm sure they would enjoy being at those smaller activities more, right? So I think it's about quality instead of just quantity, like doing. It's about picking the things that give you the energy and make you feel good and not adding more to your plate.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So what happens when we find ourselves in this ugly cycle of maybe adrenal fatigue, maybe burnout? What are the steps we should take to get well?
The same things, but like leveled up. So really, really cutting back on those non-essentials and also really reaching out for help. So that's maybe when you work with your naturopath. That's maybe when you have, hand off a lot of those tasks to other people like your husband. So I've often seen this like postpartum, for example, and maybe this would be when you're moving, you would hand off all of your, childcare to your parents or grandparents, which you normally wouldn't do for a month, but maybe you say, okay, I need to hand all of this away because I need to feel better for me. You see that postpartum too, right? No one expects a postpartum mom to go back to work 3 days postpartum. They give them that time to just be with their baby and recover and recuperate. So it's really just making that even a bigger priority. Sometimes we do herbs, sometimes we do supplements. That's more tailored to the specific person, but there are a lot of deficiencies that can happen. So like B vitamins, for example, are very quickly depleted when we are under chronic stress. So there's kind of a huge list of things, but it really depends on where you are and what you can commit to, right? Because like I'm saying, hand off these tasks. You might be sitting here listening going, well, I don't have parents nearby. Or my stress is that I have an ill person in my family and I can't just, stop caring for them. So at that point, I would kind of get some more professional help to help navigate.
Yeah, it's a good idea. And I often suggest when you're in the process of moving, particularly if you have smaller children, to save yourself a whole bunch of stress while you're actually on the market, if there's a chance for you to go have, especially dinners, because breakfasts are pretty easy, you can clean them up pretty readily. But if you're going to plan to have healthy, proper meals, especially at any people can be calling to kind of come through the house. Mm-hmm. If you have parents close by, if you have friends who you can, team up with and say, hey, can we come over to your house for dinner tonight? Like we're kind of out of our house. We want to make sure it's not in a mess. We might have showings this evening. Can we contribute to dinner and help you guys dinner? And keep the mess at somebody else's house, which sounds really, really selfish. Yeah. But also, when you only have so many hours in the evening and you're trying to eat and you're trying to do all of these things to prevent yourself McDonald's drive through every day for 2 weeks, which isn't going to make you feel any better. See if you can team up with some family or some friends to just, have a good time. Like if you're able to go to a friend's house for dinner, just sort of plan ahead and know that this might be convenient, right? Or if you can have a cold supper, sandwiches, salads, things like that, you can kind of pick up on the go. Yeah. I would highly recommend things like that as well.
Yeah. And I think the other side of it is, like I said, it's hard to ask for that help, right? It's hard for people to call up their friend and say, can I intrude on your weeknight dinner? So I think also back that community and that neighborhood of, if your next door neighbor is planning this big move and you see they have 2 little children, invite them over or go over and drop off, maybe some homemade healthy muffins or things to help them get through that. Because I think it's easier to offer help and to go, oh yeah, I remember how stressful my move was. Here's some things to help you get by, than for them to come knock on your door and say, hey, can we join you?
Yeah, that is so true. And I think it really does talk to you why we're here. I mean, so we're in this environment where both parents are usually working. Mm-hmm. Families are busier than ever. Expectations at school are higher than ever. There's homework, there's, extracurricular activities are even kind of more, I don't want to say more outrageous than ever, but like, it's not casual anymore for a lot of parents. I have a lot of friends who have kids in cheerleading and competitive dance and competitive skating and all of those things. And they're on the go constantly, and it's serious. So, and then we don't have this real sense of community anymore to lean on, and it's really, really hard for families. So, yeah, I think those are some really good suggestions. Do you have any other ideas?
The other big thing would be improving sleep, which is sometimes easier said than done, but making sure that you make that a priority and like shutting off your phone, keeping your phone out of your room at nighttime. Sometimes I even tell people you should delete your social media. Now, if you've done the phone update, it tells you how much time you spent on your phone. It's a little eye-opening, but I think really making sure to prioritize those things that make you feel better. So like we've talked about healthy eating, but sleep is a huge one there. If you get a restful sleep, or even if you get enough time in bed just to relax and decompress, if you're not getting restful sleep because kids are waking you up or you have insomnia or whatever, turning off our blue lights, so television, phones, iPads, tablets before bed actually helps to shut down cortisol, which is our stress hormone. So usually at least like an hour or 2 before bed, if you turn those off, our body will start to produce melatonin, which helps us to get into good restful sleep. So that would be a huge one. So not staying up till 2 o'clock packing your boxes and organizing your basement, things like that.
Well, yeah, and that becomes the challenge. The further ahead you get on the project in advance of it becoming a really stressful situation, all the better. Yeah. And then as far as actually managing our houses when we are on the market, I always suggest to people having as much packed up as they can, especially when there's children in the house. It's not to say to take all of their things, just most of them. And then actually, we always say, keep a box of toys maybe in the garage that's accessible. And that way you can kind of change in and out toys, but you're not in this super stressful situation where at the end of the evening, if you come home and you're relaxing and trying to play, you're not dealing with an hour worth of mess afterwards, right? And it's funny because when you do take a lot of things away from the kids and only offer them a couple of things at a time, they tend to really enjoy those things more anyway. And the more I sort of read on minimalism and just sort of our lifestyle or peaceful lifestyle, it's amazing how having fewer items around us can really reduce our stress level in general. And this is a tip for just like living life, not even not even moving. We've worked our best here to start minimizing what we have. It's an uphill battle with 3 children for sure. But for me, I know that a stressor is visual clutter. It makes me crazy. And I don't know if other people share that, but that is one of my top stressors.
I think for most people, like having chaos around you creates chaos in our minds. It creates the to-do list in our minds, or it creates the guilt of, oh, I should clean that, or I should do this, or I have to do that. I agree with you. So even in a move, trying to find those things that you know will help you, right? If that's unpacking your kitchen first because you need to have, you know where everything is to cook healthy meals. Maybe it's making sure that you set up the kids' room so that they have a happy place to play so you can deal with all the other stuff. It makes a huge difference. And purging before makes a difference too.
Yeah, I find people do purge before, and if you have time to be organized in advance, you can do a huge purge before you move. A lot of people will have things go to a storage space. So, we might have one of the pods dropped off on their lawn or on their driveway for a couple of days, and then it goes into storage. And what's fascinating about that is when people go through the process of packing up most of what they believe they don't need and storing it for a few months, when they finally get to their new space, a lot of the things they put in those boxes are no longer necessary to them. So there's always this like additional purge which happens later. And I think it's so healthy, and it's so interesting to really see what we live with. Because I know people are always so excited once we've gone through the process of packing up so many things in their house. We've come in, we've reoriented some of their furniture just to sort of open it up and make the space and the energy flow a little better in the place. We've gotten rid of extra furniture that really was closing in the space. People feel so good in their homes once it's been staged. The majority of people. There are some people who think it's bare and they hate it. So it depends what you love and how that feels. But that is such a cool process to go through. And I do find that people end up getting rid of so many things after they've moved and realize what they're really not using. So I think that's a big help. But I really appreciate your time today. Do you have any other things you think that would be important to add to this conversation before we go?
I don't think so. I could talk about stress for hours. So I think we touched on the big important ones. And but I think that just the big takeaway message is to make sure that we realize we're not alone in it, and that we really listen to those signs and take proactive action against it. So we're not getting to those really big burnout stages. But again, I could talk forever. So I think we can leave it there. Yeah.
I would highly recommend going to see Dr. Dobbie if you are considering taking on a naturopath as a doctor. It is something that my family strongly believes in. So it's sort of my primary care. And then obviously, if it's required, we do also have a traditional family doctor. But to be honest, we're kind of in this mentality of proactive taking care. Those trips to the family doctor are so much less. Like we spend so much more time and energy on, visiting the naturopath, going to the chiropractor, going for massages, doing things that are, self-care, I guess. Some you don't really think of necessarily as self-care, but they certainly are, and they do make a huge difference. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me. If
you do live in Milton or Burlington, I would really suggest having a look at the website to see all the services available there. It is not just for pregnant moms, which, might be sort of the thing. It is really a family place with a lot of great services that will help your family to be happy and healthy, and it's a great place. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, and look forward to seeing you around.
All right. Thanks, Michelle.
Take it easy. That was awesome. Thank you so much to Dr. Dobbie for joining us today. I will be posting a blog about this with a bunch of great links to help. So give me a couple of days to get that on my website. Once I do, I'll share it back through. If you did like today's podcast, some thumbs up and some hearts would truly be appreciated. If you have any questions for Dr. Dobbie, you can add them into the comments, and I will make sure that they get to her. And thank you very much. Have a great afternoon. Take care.